So what's going on, everyone? We've got about 60 people rolled in already. This is awesome. I am super, super excited to talk to my friend Matt Cameron here today about enterprise sales, something I'm very passionate about, something I have very strong convictions about and beliefs, and also something I know Matt does as well. What is always super, super helpful for us is drop your company and role. And what I mean by that is that what that helps Matt and I do is it helps us to understand, hey, John Smith, XYZ, it helps us understand, hey, do we have more leaders here? So we'll take it a little bit more strategy. We have more frontline folks. We'll take it a little more tactical. So again, we've got Omar, Senior AE Forma. All right, we've got some folks from Workday, Asana. There we go, 6+. Shout out to my folks at 6+. Previous client, Tableau, great. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, everyone keep dropping it in there. And then, no, Jeff, you don't need to mute. You are already by default muted. And then the questions, right? So Matt and we've got like some different things we've prepared to walk y'all through. And I live in Austin now, Matt, so I say y'all. It's just like it comes with when you move and you get keys to a house, it automatically says you have to say y'all if you didn't know how that worked. But really, you're gonna, what I tell everyone is be selfish in these conversations. You are in sales. Aaron Mountain's in Austin too. What's up, Aaron? I find like, you get an opportunity to talk to guys like me and Matt who talk to hundreds of sales leaders, hundreds of salespeople every year about this. And so ask the questions. I know when I was early in my enterprise career, I just ripped off everybody else. I was just like, oh, John said this is how you do multi-threading. I'm just going to do that. And so I really encourage everyone to make sure they are very active in the Q&A. Please drop it. Kristen loves the ATX skyline. I am in the office today. Why not? I'm switching it up a little. I was doing the photo shoot, Matt, so I had to come and check it out. So Matt, why don't we, as we dive in here, I'm going to share my screen. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about, if y'all don't know Matt, I know a lot of you know Matt. We just dropped Matt's LinkedIn. Go follow Matt on LinkedIn. Matt, not only, if you look at his website, Matt does a lot of really amazing things on the site. Matt also posts on LinkedIn actively. So definitely go follow him. Matt, do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about SASE, other things that you're up to and kind of maybe set the stage for some of the conversation we're going to have? And I'm going to share my screen here in a sec too.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. So quick context setting for why I'm chatting about enterprise sales. So the reason I ended up in enterprise sales was that I was a terrible computer engineer. I studied hardware engineering back in the 90s, was told I talked too much, was a bad technician, should study marketing. So that was at IBM. So I went off and did it, and it was helpful. And then I went and did postgrad finance, which is you're gonna hear a little bit about later, because what I learned was people that made the most money and had the most impact in terms of the customers they served are people that were coming up with customers solutions. So how do I help you serve your customers better? Those sorts of things. So beyond technical and tactical sales. So I've done that. I've worked for companies like Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Salesforce.com, et cetera, et cetera. I have a real passion for the complex sale. In terms of what I'm doing today is I'm working with sales leadership. You'll see that, SASE sales leadership, and we train the go-to-market functions at a leadership level. The thing I want everybody to know, though, is that my personal primary focus these days is social impact. And if you go to our site, you'll see that we have an inclusion and a diversity slot where we have our scholarship program. And that's all I care about right now. We have large companies that use us to train their managers, and we use that to fund hopefully hundreds of folks who are underrepresented in tech. So if you identify as being underrepresented or you know people, please send them to us and we'll give you free training. That's what we care about.
Yeah, and Matt is living this. I can just tell you, Matt and I have been having conversations about this over the last 2 or 3 months, and Matt knows this is something that I also care deeply about and something that we need to keep the conversation going on. And it's an important piece, not to kind of derail, but Matt, I really think you're doing an amazing job of leading by example with this. And I know that this, truly is a priority. And so I think for everyone, it's free leadership training. Like, please take advantage of it. I don't know why you wouldn't, I'm sure what I find consistently is most people aren't getting enough of it at their current job. So, all right. So we're going to hop in here. Let me hop into view slideshow. Boom. All right. So So these are some of the key topics that we're going to try to walk through. Again, in the Q&A, I'm going to be monitoring it live. So again, like I said, there's 80 plus of you now. Lots of love. Appreciate you guys showing up on a Wednesday. That, again, drop your questions in there. I'll get to them when they're appropriate. Matt will tee them up and we'll get them answered. So we're going to talk about getting readiness for enterprise, how, basically getting a C-level meeting. And I think, Matt, one of the things we can talk about there is how to work your way up, how to leverage your execs. Maybe you're not ready to get a C-level meeting because you don't know how to talk like a CEO. I think that's an important piece. That's part of that being C-suite ready. And then aligning on value and competing to win. And I think in enterprise sales, I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's a former SDR leader. She was the head of SDRs at Snowflake and transferred to the field. So Nicolette's doing great now. And we were talking about some of these things yesterday. So I'm super pumped. It's super top of mind. So Matt, do you want to kind of kick this off? Maybe talk about getting ready to sell to enterprise and kind of what are some of the key aspects that you see?
Yeah, so first off, this is really just a company readiness. And so some of you folks might be in roles where you feel like you're running into the wind a bit. And so I'm just going to encourage you to screenshot this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But what I've learned from working with a number of companies over the years, if you don't have this sort of ticket to the game set of attributes around your technology, you're not ready to sell to enterprise, regardless of how good you may be. You'll spend all this time on a deal and you'll just get hit at a gate. For example, they'll do the deep dive and at some point someone will ask you about your security certifications or the ability to do auditing on user behavior, whatever your solution is. And so screenshot this, steal it, look at it, talk to product. Do you have this? And if you don't, then you've probably got some work to do before you're ready to move up. Most commonly, Jake, it happens, doesn't it? When people are like, hey, we've been SMB, bottom mid-market. Now everybody pointing the guns at enterprise and they forget this stuff.
Well, yeah, they forget the stuff. And I think what happens is, they also get pulled there. They listen to their VC or they see a path of another company. And I think too often we try to apply this kind of one size fits all approach to growth. And so they think this is my path. And suppose guess what? And also defining enterprise. Again, I was talking to a friend at a recently IPO company and enterprise for them is over 200 employees, 200 employees. Okay, that's a lot different. 200, 2,000, 10,000, the sales motion couldn't be more different. So I think it's also being realistic, it's where you're at right now.
That for a second, because I think it's really important because you can sell to Kroger's or to Microsoft, but you're selling a solution that's worth $1,000. That's not an enterprise sale. You're selling to an enterprise sized company, but in the let's define it so everyone's on the same page, shall we?
Yep.
I mean, how do you think about an enterprise sale, Jake? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think that there's maybe a couple of elements. One, that there are multiple groups that are involved in the initial purchase. It's an issue that has been that is a priority for the organization currently, and that the primary sale is land and expand, right? And now it's not in every case, and I'm talking I'm talking big, I'm talking thousands of people. So to me, that their enterprise sales to me is that there's a complexity within an organization that is up to you as a seller to navigate and to project manage. And therefore, and the path to grow the account is just as important as getting your foot in the door. So maybe I don't know if that's a full definition. It's maybe partial. That's kind of my,
I think it covers it very well. And I think that to your point about the complex buying circle and this realization that unless you're selling SAP back office or Oracle, you're not selling the whole deal up front. You're going to do a proof of concept in the division or department, and everyone needs to understand that. And secondly, you have to be very careful if you're working at a company where you have a sales cycle that looks like that, right? Multiple parties, multiple stakeholders, multiple months, but the deal value is $10,000. You don't have
You're screwed.
You laugh, but you've seen it. Right?
You're screwed. Yeah, exactly. It's a 90-day sales cycle for 90 or 6-month sales cycle for a 25. It's we call that no man's land, which is deal complexity high, ASP low. That is death. And I think a lot of SaaS companies are delusional and think that, the other thing is I think as a part of enterprise sales, maybe something I'd add is that you have to bring to bear more of your resources too. Your customer success org, your sales engineers, it really becomes playing chess, and it really becomes playing the patient game and the long game and building that, but also driving momentum. I did a post this morning about it. I think one of the biggest fallacies though in enterprise is that deals have to take a long time. I think it's fake. I've went from 0 with a company to 4 million in 10 months. And I can tell you it's because if you work the process and you take extreme ownership, and we'll get into some of the tactics, but I think it's just, we have to think that there is a process to enterprise, and there's a way to kind of do it correctly or not. So Matt, do you want to talk this a little bit, kind of this idea of like what's required? Like
assuming, yeah, 100%. Assuming the company's ready, you've got to figure out where you fit into this and based on the product you sell. So for example, bottom right-hand side, right? You really only want to be on the right-hand side of this if you're selling to enterprise. It's totally fine. You can make a W-2 over $1 million, even if you are a just a tech expert, right? Actually, my screen's just died, so just a second. I'm going to bring you back to make sure I can see you again. Sorry, Jake, just lost you. Yeah, so a technical expert, if you're selling a product to IT, for example, you might be selling a penetration defense system or something like that to the head of the CISO or something like that. You just need to be extremely good at your vertical domain expertise, right? So I deeply understand security. That's fine. So I keep hearing people say I need to be a trusted advisor. Well, actually, the CISO knows what they need, and she's looking for a specific solution. It's worth $3 million, and you are an expert in that. That's fine. You only need to be a trusted advisor, really, when you're coming to them with what I would call the provocative sale. Some people, frame it in the terms of challenger, where you're actually helping them to attain a business outcome that they weren't aware of. There's an opportunity that they hadn't yet pursued. And in that case, they need to believe that you or someone in your team is peer level with them. So they believe what you're going to say. And I'll give you a specific example. When I was working at Salesforce, I had a rep, his name is Gavin, and we're selling CRM, but he was selling to a bank. And instead of selling customer relationship management at a technical expertise level, he went to the CMO and said, there's this underserved customer base or segment for you, which is mortgage brokers and the producers, the people that sign you up for a mortgage. Yep. And we can completely transform that experience by using our technology. And here's what it would look like. He wasn't talking about the tech. He was talking about a new way to engage with the customer's customer. And he did a $20 million deal as a result. The only way he got that is because he had deep banking domain expertise. It had very little to do with his technical expertise, which is taken care of by sales engineers and solutions engineers. So you need to figure out, given to whom you're selling and what you're selling, where are you? Are you an expert in the product and what it does in that domain? Or are you an expert in that business, finance, insurance?
I love this. Yeah, this is so spot on. I think about, again, like a transactional sale, right? Which is kind of the low, medium, the high, low technical. It's like, it's so much about just build the trust. Hey, come on, let's do this thing. Come on, hey, Matt, you can trust me. Let's go. Right? Like the technical and just how that changes with enterprise and how all the skills are necessary, right? Like, I don't think I've ever seen, well, unless they're an amazing quarterback, an enterprise rep that doesn't have at least some ability to talk cohesively about the product, or like you said, the problem set, even if they are selling a highly technical, because it's tough because then you don't know what the product's capable of. Therefore, your ability to craft a custom solution, I think, is diminished. And I think a lot of enterprise sellers outsource all their knowledge to SEs. I think that's also a mistake. You've got to have a good understanding of what the product can do, and especially in that space, which is, I think, a good example of what you shared with the banking example. So talk a little bit about this, right? Like, if I'm a rep, what are like the telltale signs that either I'm in the wrong quadrant or I'm struggling? Again, maybe we can go deep on a couple of these and why you think they happen. And maybe also we can talk, Matt, like, how to turn it around. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, but maybe we can do a little bit of solving now. We've got a few questions popping in. So guys, keep the questions coming in. And we'll get to those here in the next couple minutes.
Yeah, sure. So the first one's an easy one. And this tells me return calls just means that they don't care, which means you're not relevant, right? And I've got a phrase I'll use later, which we're going to talk about, Jake, you and I, about why an executive would care about you. But whether you're dealing with somebody junior or senior, if they're not returning your calls, it's not a priority for that individual. There might be a sale to be had, but remember this, and people make this mistake every day. Like, I can save the company 20 million, or I can increase revenue by 5 million. But how is that individual you're speaking with measured, and why would they care?
Yeah.
Right? Budget goes away. You tell me, budget goes away. What does that mean?
Oh, so it's the exact same thing. Guess what? Every enterprise company has the budget. They just don't want to give it to you. Like, it's the biggest fallacy in enterprise sales. Guys, there's nothing that most polite FU is, Matt, this is a really interesting initiative. We really want to take this on. Can we pick this up in Q1? Matt, this is a really interesting. So if budget goes away, or if someone says, this is interesting, can we pick this up in insert quarter? You're not a priority. Americans in particular about it. I feel like this is we work with a lot of global orgs. I know you do too. I feel like the Americans in particular have this problem the most, where like buyers, we always want to leave the door a little open, right? We've got a FOMO culture, and salespeople, I feel like, just buy into it. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, you still buy it. So that is to me what budget goes away means.
Yes. And I'll say, if I'm in a deal and that we're about to close the deal, or we're 3/4 of the way through it and the budget disappears, that tells me you're not high enough. Because if you're speaking to an executive, by definition, they have the ability to allocate and reallocate funds.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Anytime they like during the year, anytime.
That's right.
So that's why you have to have that executive, not the person who owns the budget, but the ability, the approver who has the ability to reallocate it. Because guess what? All that budget, we know this year, I had budget
Especially
in
COVID.
March, and shit, it all went away because now all non-essential spend is stopped, right? So it changed.
Well, and I think especially with COVID, that if you're not in that meeting with the CFO, or you haven't prepared the right talk track for your team of champion or your people, you're done. It's over. If you're sitting over, then I know we're going to talk about it, that same shitty proposal that's products and costs and some terrible ROI calculator, like, ain't going to get it done now. Like it has to be, there's a diligence, and that you've got to be in that meeting now more than ever. And I think that in coming up with a compelling reason why you should be in that meeting too.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the last point, the only one really worth coming back to, so many times you do all the hard work and you get an email responded to by the CXO and they delegate you down to somebody.
Of course.
But you want to get that meeting and ask for return access. And a simple
That's it. Yep, that's the move.
The very specific thing I would say, excellent. So just so I understand, why is it important for us to investigate this with your people so I know what to focus on? And what are the metrics, or what are the indicators that it makes sense to move forward? Because what I would like to do is, when we've found that, report it back to you. It's A, B, C, and D. Okay, great. Once I've done that, can we meet to review? Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's the same we choose. That's exactly what kind of our process. And I mean, the hit rate on that is like 100%, right? Like, and the key is just understanding that's what's going to happen. And, whenever you're talking to the executive level, you're going to get delegated. There is a very low likelihood, I mean, extremely low in an enterprise deal, that you're going to stay up at the VP of talent acquisition or SVP at Intel Global, right? Like, instead, you're going to go talk. So just showing that you did it goes a long way with establishing, you talked about trust advisor, that peer relationship. Look, I'm not trying to, I get how this works. So Susan, again, next steps, I'll set up a conversation. We'll do a high level with Kim and the team. If that feels good, then we'll set up a conversation to talk about how we typically partner in a limited capacity and what that looks like over time. When you do that and you end a meeting, every executive goes, Matt gets it, and I feel like too often but I also blame leadership for part of this too, Matt. I feel like leadership has brainwashed salespeople to believe like everyone's work with the decision maker only, everyone's a buyer, don't bother your time with the peasants down on the front line. And I feel like this is also a leadership problem, but we can get into that. So, all right, so let's break this down a little bit more. I'll let you if you want to kind of take a stab at this. We talked a little bit about this, but maybe you can just add a little bit of color.
So old school stuff. If you're going to sell to enterprise, it's a team sport, right? It's not just you as a rep. You've got to leverage all your resources, as Jake just said, right? And there are power bases. So, as this is an old school way of thinking about it, and it's still is true. So people in the gray box perhaps have political influence. The people in the green box are the ones who can actually make the decision. And your job as a quarterback in these deals is to figure out what this looks like.
Yeah.
It's so common. You must see this, Jake. I go and inspect a deal with somebody and I say, draw the map. They don't have the map. I'm like, okay, evaluators, approvers, decision makers, influencers, who are they? Don't know.
They've got the hierarchy.
Who cares about us?
They've got the
right?
hierarchy. We call it the difference between the hierarchy and the powerarchy. And they
Yeah.
were always different.
Yes.
Always different.
Yes. So then if you click once more, you'll see that in the COVID era, we know now that nothing almost is getting approved without a C-level person getting involved. And guess what? Probably they're not going to want to hear from an SDR that's trying to break into account, nor necessarily will they speak to somebody who doesn't have enough tenure. Remember, one of the things I always say, and I think I'll mention it later, is that you get delegated down to the person you sound like, right? As I mentioned. And so that's when you use the team, right?
That's right.
Your boss, your boss's boss, or whatever else, so that we have a team or account pursuit mentality.
I love that. And we got a couple questions. I think this will be good. What's up, Drew? Drew, my man, I haven't talked to you in a minute, man. I love this. This is a great question. But you know what I loved, what I figured out about enterprise sales, and it was good. I cut my chops at a company called Career Builder, like right during like the financial crisis. So I had to get more creative. Is like what I've realized is that good enterprise sales is like lazy sales. It's like I've figured out, okay, I'm gonna use my CEO to get the data in here. I put this person here. I do this, and then I just showed up. I really feel like great enterprise sales. And when you look at this, I'm just a really good project manager. I know that no momentum is going to get driven if I don't do it. I'm going to push this person with this person, I'm going to connect the dots. And, that's how how I got every single one of my executive level meetings with an enterprise is I looped in my COO or CEO or SVP. Like, again, like I was 29 in national account. I was the youngest national account manager out of 75 at Career Builder. Do you think a VP of talent acquisition at Intel is going to meet with a 29-year-old, just finished, graduate from Missouri State? No, not going to meet with me. And I think too often, Matt, what I see gets in the way of this is ego. What do you think? Like, I feel like ego gets in the way of reps not looping in the right people at times because they feel this, maybe they feel pressure too, maybe it's not ego, because they feel a pressure to get it done themselves,
I think, yes, and there's the issue of, I'm worried about being vulnerable. It's not ego. It's I don't want to expose the fact that I need you, boss. And if I need you, so this is a leadership problem, which is we used to have a saying at Salesforce, which I carry through, which is we never lose alone and we never win alone. If you win a deal alone, you're not a hero. You're not celebrated. That was lucky. That was bad, right? So I always have built these cultures where there's no lone wolves in enterprise. Right. Yeah. And in a deal review and inspection, I'm looking at who are you using across the team, which brings a really important point. Many people on the call are at larger companies, and something I always talk to folks as they come up through enterprises, don't forget your internal ability to influence, because there's the great SEs, there's leadership, there's the head of CS. And if you keep crying wolf on deals that never get won, they won't support you. So how do you build your internal relationship such that when you need Jake on that call, Jake will respond to it, right? So a lot of people don't think about that. The bigger your organization goes, the more important this is, because they're just going to ignore you when you need them.
Okay, so for this, Matt, this is a perfect segue. So Drew asked a question, generally speaking, what's more valuable to a new prospect? Our expertise in performing our services or our related domain expertise of their vertical? So expertise in, web app development or whatever, or expertise in banking. And obviously it's not 100-0, right? Like how do you think about that question?
I think it's the wrong question. I think it's the right question with the wrong options. I think the right option is what's most important is for your ability to help them achieve their personal goals. And that might be through your domain expertise because you're selling something that's going to change the world, or it might be technical expertise. I don't know.
Yeah.
But all that matters is that if I'm selling to Jake, he believes I can help him achieve his current priorities. And that could be through either one of those.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can do the research ahead of time to have an idea, we got another question about, convincing an exec to take a meeting. I think this is maybe a good segue to that, talking about, executives getting ready to, they only want to meet if you know something. So let's talk maybe a little bit about prep. Let's talk a little bit about kind of this conversation. And I think this will answer some of that. So Drew, I think the takeaway is it depends. And that's kind of what it is. And that's why it's always been my knock on challenger sale is I believe that we practice and we have kind of our own version of like components of it. But, without either your own discovery and discovery also includes prep, I've just never been seeing anybody be really successful. It's just challenging someone with like an industry trend and forcing it down someone's throat versus using their own, words and priorities. But that's a whole other topic. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this. So how do you think about these, external corporate department, again, for these people who are trying to get meetings with executives? I think this is maybe a good segue into that.
So the slide before said that, it was actually given to me by the CFO of Johnson & Johnson. He said, if you want to get into my office, I need to think that you know something I need to know now. And my goodness me, well, how do you figure that out? In SMB, next to impossible. In enterprise, pretty easy, because there's a lot of public information. So, Jake and I have got a couple of slides here to illustrate this. And if you look at this, executives are impacted by external and corporate priorities. Those priorities dictate what the departments are doing. So if you're selling to a department, you better understand what the corporate priorities are and how that might be affected by externalities. And this is why a lot of enterprise reps have MBAs, because you have to kind of understand how business works. I don't. I did a postgrad in finance, and that was really helpful. If you look at these slides here, right, the top one was at the time, I think Zoom, so positively impacted by COVID. And the bottom one is United, negatively. So you need to know that, because you're going to sound really stupid if you go into United right now and not focus on the right things. And we've got a couple of examples if you want to have a look at those. Yep. So company level research, right? You go there and if you read, look at this, right? This is telling us that in their publicly available information, that nothing that's non-critical is going to get spent on. Nothing. So don't even bother, right? Straightforward, right? And where are we finding these? We're finding these in their S1s, which is their filings with the SEC, their 10Ks and 10Qs. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look them up. If you're selling to the Fortune 1000 or any publicly listed company, you need to get really comfortable going through these documents. And one of my favorite areas is there's a management section on risks, management risks. And it's really good for competitors too, because they go and look at their competition and see what do they think the risks are. And they have to be transparent. Otherwise they can get in all sorts of trouble. And if you can hook onto solving one of those risks, one of those problems, then you're in good shape, because that's on the executive agenda. Right?
You know what we should do, Matt? Maybe a follow-up. We should do like a annual report, 10K teardown. Like maybe
I'd already thought of that, Jake. I'm like, that'd be fun. And then anyone who attends, right, can figure out how their solution like, because you and I could rip it apart and find all the opportunities for people.
Easy, right?
So
and maybe we could invite like a couple of people to raise their hand and say, hey, bring us one of your target accounts and we'll help them to break in.
We'll destroy it. Yeah.
So let's talk about Albertsons. I think this is a really good example here, and we'll move through this one.
Yeah. So there's a couple of pages we got from Albertsons. And so here, what we're learning from publicly available information, right, is they have to grow their internet presence, right, allow people to do pickup, curbside stuff, right, and what they're worried about, look at the bottom. Many of our competitors have added locations and multi-channel approach to marketing and advertising. So if you're selling a marketing-based solution to them, what are you going to talk about? Omni-channel, right? Next page, if you want to have a look at, remember this is risk related to their business.
People are very excited, Matt, by the way, for our idea. There's a lot of yes, please, me, et cetera. That's good. You're being selfish. I like it.
All right. Well, for a small fee, Jake and I'll do anything. But look at this. So let's say I was selling a mobile marketing automation solution to these guys, for your Whole Foods shopping app, right? Look at this. We're seeking to build new and enhanced customer relations through our digital capabilities. Awesome. But then I found something else out because I'm smart. I went to LinkedIn and I thought, what do they have in mobile? 76 people in engineering with mobile in the title or the description. Now, depending on how you think about it, that's an opportunity or a threat. Because if I've got 76 mobile engineers, well, how big is your company? And how many PhDs do you have? Right? Maybe I shouldn't be selling to them. And again, just to close out, they're going to add, the next slide that you're on, Jake, is good. Look at this, 1,600 click and collect locations available by the end of 2021, right? Massive investment.
Wild.
But how am I going to help them with that? I mean, there are so many ways you could assist them. Now I'm thinking about the executive agenda, and I am way above the department level. Now I'm going to get some serious sponsorship if I can help with that, because they told the market they would get that.
That's right. Yeah, because this is what they said. And then this becomes, God, this becomes what you have to drive toward everything. So before we get into this example, which I think is a perfect one, let's I'm going to take a couple of these. Let's see, which one's a good one? Okay, let's talk about this. So Lily Goldman, what's up, Lily? To the tune of helping individuals achieve their personal goals, what tips do you have? So before we kind of move past it, on tailoring relationship sale to resonate with individuals who have different priorities. Brian Barron had a similar question. How do you align several people in an organization? So, we had that one slide and you had tech, you had these different groups. So maybe what are some tactics that you've seen for doing that as a part of this? Like, what are some tactics you've seen at understanding these priorities and then making sure that you're aligned when it comes down to crunch time?
Pretty simple. I ask them. So in any of these deals, you'll get introduced to different groups, either proactively or you'll work your way in. I'll ask them flat out. I'll say, okay, so the project X, what relevance does this have to what you need to achieve this year? Blah, blah. And then I'll say, okay, and does it help you personally at all? And I'll use like human language. I'll say, so look, some of these projects come with a ton of risk. Like, we're going to roll out a new CRM problem, and if it goes badly, people can get burned. For you, what are you thinking about this? Is this an opportunity, a threat? Like, how do we reduce the risk for you? And then they'll say to you, no, actually, I'll pick Salesforce as an example. Actually, I really want to get involved in this because I know this is a new hot technology, and this was back in the day when SaaS was new, and I want to get known to be able to deploy these sorts of solutions, right? So just ask them. And it's different for every single person. If you look at a proper opportunity plan for an enterprise account, you have the individual's name, their role within the deal, and then their personal motivations. And everyone's, you can't find that. Yes, you can. Just ask them.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's just such a simple thing that we get scared, or we get assumptive that we hear from one person some macro priority, not realizing how that priority trickles down. My best tactic, is as a part of this, and to get to that level is where I see, and this is really across our kind of client base, et cetera. The most consistent places where we see enterprise deals fall out is between meeting 2 to meeting 3 or meeting 3 to 4, just depending. And usually that break point is the meeting that has a bunch of people in it. And then you've got to move the deal forward. And consistently, that is where we see deals fall out. And there's a few reasons why they fall out. One, you're relying now on a champion to try to herd cats, and Susan has 19 other priorities. So the meeting never gets on the books again. It drags on for months, et cetera. So you're relying on a champion that just is unrealistic. 2, you let people derail the meeting. I cannot tell you how many enterprise meetings I've been in with a rep, and then IT starts talking, right? Like, it's always IT, that. Well, how does this API going to integrate with our current internal? Like, dude, Richard, shut up. Like, we're trying to talk business value right now. But let me tell you how to shut it down. Okay, so we call it separate solutioning. And when you get the big meeting, here's how you set the agenda. It's very simple. Hey, Matt, based on our few conversations with Karen, the team, we're looking forward to the conversation today. Goal for the conversation today: talk through some of the high levels from our takeaways from that, give you a high level for how we might help. And then we're going to set up separate meetings next week. One, IT, to talk more like kind of technical specs. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Operations, we're going to set up a separate meeting to talk more detail about how this might affect operations. And marketing, where this might fit for marketing. Does that work for everybody? Fantastic. Now, guess what? I go drive those meetings. And I've kind of, I don't know if I coined this phrase, more meetings equals faster deals in enterprise. Because I now control the pace. And guess what? When Randy from IT starts chirping about the API, Randy, that is a great question. It's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. Back to business value, back to executive value. When operations, how's this going to impact our, great question. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. And it allows us to stay focused in that big meeting on business outcomes and impact, and not let all those little negative little jabs. And I know you all, if you're in enterprise sales, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been in those meetings where there's just those negative people start to pick it apart. So that has been my go-to, and it's just worked, man.
So I'll also offer that maybe you can get ahead of it, because if that happens, some personality types will kind of get pissed that you're not going to give it to them in that meeting. So what I try to get reps to do in advance of the meeting, because everyone's on the invite, right? I email them individually and say, look, here's the meeting. What's important for you to understand in this
Love
meeting?
that.
And then sometimes you can reply and say, hey, got it. Guess what? We ain't going to cover it in the meeting. but we'll do it later, just to set the expectation. And then oftentimes you don't get people reply. So in the meeting, you call them out. Say, Jake, hey, we didn't get a chance to connect. What's most important for you to understand this meeting?
Perfect. And that's exactly what we're going to cover next week, right? And you're setting the expectation. There's going to be a meeting. I'm going to be working with you. Kevin Staniszewski. I think I got that one right. I'm not known for my pronunciation skills because I'm from Missouri. He says, yeah, it's what tips for tying those department levels. So the point of, we call it again, separate solutioning is I then go and understand their priorities. So guess what? When I come back to the broader group, IT, here's how we're working with you, ops, you, marketing, you, and then our main group here, which is sales, here's you. And everyone's happy because they see the solution and through their own lens. And that's the only way to do it. It's the only, for me, Matt, like it's the only way. If you only anchor to this and you treat these other people as like not addressing their priorities in the final proposal or how you solve for them or how you're going to work with them, that's when you're not in the room. They have a closed door meeting and IT's like, look, I just don't think this is just not a priority. And then you get the old Q1 or Q2 line, so that's my big thing, Kevin, is you have to have those meetings. So then when you put together your final walkthrough, I talk to Matt, I talk to Jake, I talk to Kevin, and I'm delivering the exact piece for all of them versus this holistic company-wide. If you just do what I just said there and start to make your focus a proposal that, you're going to see a massive increase in late stage meetings. That's at least my hot take. All right, let's talk a little bit about this example. I think it's a good one for people.
Yeah. So if you're selling CRM, and CRM, back in the day, Salesforce was trying to get into Toyota, and a standard rep might come forward with this type of value proposition, right? Talks about the tool at a departmental level or whatever else. But I can tell you at that time, it would have bounced straight off because at that time, this is what the CEO and the executive are worried about. When we said at the start, macro issues, company issues flow down to departmental priorities, right? And right now they had a big problem with recall, which meant that trust was a big issue. I mean, like literally gas pedals were killing people by sticking to the floor. And if you just click through, Jake, you'll see that actually Salesforce had a similar trust issue in 2006, I think it was. Give us a couple of clicks and you'll see the headlines here. Salesforce was going down for hours and hours at a time. So they could really relate to customer trust issues. And if you click through, you'll see what they did. They said, right, we're going to be transparent. We're going to create trust.salesforce.com, yada, yada, yada. So internally, this resonated with them, and they put together their bid team, their pursuit team, and said, well, how do we get into Toyota? How do we get them to pay attention to us? And they said this, look at this. We're going to help you fix public trust by putting a social network in your car with real-time updates, and it's going to fix your brand equity issue. Holy crap, that doesn't mention CRM anywhere. Mm-hmm. Nowhere. So, and now how do you do that? It's because you've got an enterprise grade salesperson who looks at the whole context for Toyota. They got the meeting with this gentleman who was the CEO at the time, and then there's the press release, right? They're super excited about their partnership, and it has nothing to do with the label CRM. So, Xerox didn't sell photocopies back in the day. They sold productivity solutions, right? And Jay's nodding because this is old school stuff, but we don't talk about it enough. We're selling outcomes, not technology, right?
That I love. My team hears me. This is like the drum I've just been like pounding over the last 2 weeks. I really feel like it's I don't know, man. Why do you think it's happening, Matt? Like, why do you feel like we're so product efficiency? Like, why do you feel like enterprise? Because it's not just it's enterprise in particular, relationship. Because it used to just be, look, feature benefit. If you can't say the benefit, don't talk about the feature, right? If you don't know the benefit for that individual, do you just feel like right now we're so focused on tech and process that we've forgotten like some of these like new nuances here? Like, I digress a little bit, but I want to get your take on it.
Yeah, it's because I think we are, especially in the SaaS world, we're venture backed, we're growing fast, we're adding people at 1 million miles an hour, and we're not investing in our people. We're just teaching them our product.
That's right.
That's why.
Yeah, and I think what we've got, you kind of reminded me of something I've talked about. It's like we got a chicken and egg. People are so worried that people are going to leave, so they're not investing, but people are leaving because you're not investing. I think about, gosh, how fortunate I was, Matt. Like, now people have people like you. who can help. But, when I was first promoted to leadership, I got put through a leadership training program. Like I had a formal program, and my gosh, the skills that I learned, to think about if I didn't have that, woof. And I still, Matt, might have thrown a pen at somebody at some point. So that was a dark time. And then, I had an executive leadership track that I got selected for after 2 years, so I just feel like there's just an underinvestment. So invest in yourself. All of you are investing in yourselves now. All right. So let's talk about being C-suite ready. So you hit on something. I mean, Matt, I have to tell you, I'm sure my marketing team, Becca and Shelby, are listening. They're like, that is exactly what Jake's like. Some of the things you've said are literally verbatim. This is definitely one of them, that you get to talk to who you sound like, and, the other thing that I'll add, and I want you to jump in, is you don't have to sound like everybody. For me, again, when I got a meeting with the CEO of Kimpton Hotels, I brought in my CEO. When I got a meeting with the VP of Talent Acquisition at Intel, I brought in my COO. I walk in, they've got a whole lunch spread, all this stuff. There's 8 people. I'm just sitting there. I think I literally was probably 29. I'm going to sit down and talk to the VP of Talent Acquisition at Intel. Or, this woman, I think, controlled like a 1,500 person org or something, right? And is responsible for global talent. It's like, no, you don't have, I think that this is another issue. And then I want you to talk about the delegation. Is like, just bring in the team. You don't have to have all the answers. And then you sit back, and I just sat there. I didn't do anything.
That's right. And I also say, as much as we may not want it to be this way, we do have to make people comfortable, because our psychology is, I feel better if I can relate to you. So I got a specific example of a company in New York that their culture is to wear polo neck shirts and jeans to work or whatever, but they were selling a solution to a bank. And this rep turned up for an introduction to the board, and then an email went to the CEO afterwards of that company saying, don't ever have that person darken our door a day. And they specifically called out the fact that he was dressed too casually. And I know that sounds silly, but remember this trust, right? If I'm an institutional banker and my world is buttoned up with ties, then why am I going to spend $2 million with someone who rocks up in jeans and a polo? It shouldn't be like that, but it is. So we need to mirror our audience to the extent that it makes sense.
I think what a great call out, again, and especially, and then Matt, I think, well, I think I've seen this, like, as I'm married with kids now, it actually becomes less important. It's like, that guy's trustworthy. It's like, but again, when you're 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, you gotta act as if, and not fake it till you make it from a skill set standpoint, but you do have to, if you're in a suit, I'm going to show up in a suit. If you're in and I feel like that we call it mirror match, right? It's like, I'm going to match the environment. I'm going to mirror that in the way that I behave. I think that's another one that's kind of lost for some people. So let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn. Obviously, this is something, I like to get after.
Yeah,
so let's talk a little bit about it. How are you, thinking about LinkedIn, thinking about, let me go back. Again, thinking about kind of leveraging it as a part of this process.
Yeah, LinkedIn was the best and worst thing to ever happen to SDRs, that's for sure. Because when I was doing phone calling, I could pretend I was 40 because I'd done a lot of research and I sounded like I knew what I was talking about. Yeah. With LinkedIn, they can quickly check and go, oh, holy heck, he's 1 year out of college. Right? But don't kick own goals. Like, this is a real one I pulled out. Honorary World Star. Are you kidding me? Why would I buy from you? And on the next page are people that I know who are enterprise grade. And I want to pull this guy out. The guy in the middle with the haircut like mine, his name's Gavin. One of the best enterprise sales guys in the world. He did the $20 million deal at Commonwealth Bank of Australia. And look, if he calls me and I'm a banker and I look at his LinkedIn profile, I'll be like, you talk about things I talk about. That makes sense. Let's have a conversation. There's no world record sales holders here, right?
Yep. Just so you know, Matt, you're going to love this. 129,000 people on LinkedIn. This is from last year, so we haven't refreshed it. 129,000 people. You can just run the search. Have President's Club in their headline. I can't wait, because can't wait. I'm sure Susan, head of HR, cannot wait to meet with you, John. I just feel like you guys have just got to realize LinkedIn is not your resume. It's your professional, lookbook now, and same thing goes, like you talked about headshots, you and I were talking a little bit about that. We've talked about this, like It's just who you want to be known as in your industry. And I'm telling you too, but guess what? It goes two ways. People want to hire that person. I've never seen a person, and Matt, you can validate this maybe. I've never seen a rep on LinkedIn who didn't hit 125% of quota and make President's Club. Like, so, if you sound like, hey, I'm an expert in this space, then you're going to stand out from the rest either way. So it's a win-win. It makes your resume look better, and it makes your, attention to buyers look better. So I just don't know why more people aren't thinking about it.
Yeah. And I just thought one more tactical thing. There are tools out there that help you. We talk about, well, how do I speak to an executive? So there's mine. This tool, Crystal, I have no relationship to them, but what I like about them is with this plugin, you can see exactly how to speak to me. And I'm stunned at how accurate it is. Like just, you want to sell something to me? Screenshot this. This is exactly how I want to be.
It really is. It's kind of eerie because I know you like crack a few jokes, but then again, like be concise. Like, it's kind of, I can imagine selling to you is fun.
Yeah, I want to like you at the start, but then you tell me just specifically what I want to hear and keep it as, say it in one word or less and I'm happy, right? So we can learn more than we think. And this flows into something we don't have a slide on, but really is just call plans, for goodness sake. Number of calls they go into that are high value. And I use a simple framework. You can use anything you like, but actions, answers, and attitude. So I'll say to someone, what answers are we going to get out of this call, right? Why is that important now to progress a deal? What actions do we want them to take? And specifically, what attitude do we want them to have? And it better not be, oh, I want them to buy our stuff. It needs to be that by partnering with us, we're going to change their customer experience and give them a competitive advantage. Okay, how are you going to get them to think that? Do you know what I mean? And so proper prep.
Prep is, I was talking to a sales leader, company owned Backup. We were talking, was it last week? And that was it. It's one of the things we actually spent a lot of time talking about. They're getting ready to revamp their, methodology. And, we talked about like the importance of prep. Like, it's just kind of I feel like the amount of reps showing up and winging it today is like an all-time high. You just expect to go in, run and gun, and it's why you're not getting where you want to be. We've got a bunch of questions. Here's what I'm thinking, Matt. Do you want to let's hit a couple of these points. So I think this one's really,
we can go fast on this one.
Yeah, I think this is a really good one. So let's talk through this one. And then I think we can spend the last, 5-10 minutes here diving into some Q&A. Again, keep them coming, loving it. We've got 9 questions right now teed up or so. And I think we can do some rapid fire at the end. So keep the questions coming.
Awesome. So here we go. Aligning to customer objectives at an executive level. This is your goal as an enterprise salesperson, right? Is what are they thinking about 2 to 3 years down the line? Because guess what? A true executive in the C-suite, they're just monitoring what's already been agreed to happen this year, right? It's already been figured out. It's what's happening next year and the year after they're worried about. And then you want to understand what is their strategy? How do you find that out? Strategy gets dictated from above. That's why you need executive access. And then the steps to getting there. And then if you click through, Jake, what we do is in terms of building our sales plan is aligning to that. What do we want? Well, we want a contract for $5 million, $1 million, whatever happens, whatever else. How are we going to do that? We get to your point, Jake, we're going to run a divisional proof of concept. Then we're going to take down Latin America. Then we're going to do EMEA, whatever it happens to be. And making sure that we write this down so that they understand that we know what their goals are and how we think we can align to that, right? Now, clearly not in this format. It comes in a proposal format, but you need to link these together, and I rarely see it done. Like, if you want to knock over a $5 million deal, like real enterprise deals, you got to be thinking like this.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know how many of you are in enterprise sales and had you have the account strategy meetings where the AVP comes into town, or you do a town hall. God, these at Career Builder, Matt, were legendary. You would show up and the template was so easy. It was so like, I don't know why people, and again, I was, 10, 15 years younger than most of these people, they would get massacred. You get up there, hey, here's my top 3 accounts I'm going to talk about. And they would just get destroyed. And it's like, who are, again, company issues, long range goals, right? Like how we line up to those, right? One thing that's not here is the people. Who are the people? Who do I need to get in touch with? Blah, 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 right? Strategy. How are we going to move from point A to point B over the next 9 to 12 months? That's it. Every enterprise deal is a very similar, that's what you got to understand. What are their priorities that we can help to solve for? Who are the players that are going to be involved, and what's the timeline to move from point A to point B? That's the core part of this. Did you guys have those at Salesforce? Did you guys have those like?
We did, but the most brutal we had was Electronic Data Systems, HP Enterprise, called a value review board, because our
Yeah.
pursuits were 18 months and the deals were 20 million
Yeah.
plus. And what we did is we internally costed it. So if I want a sales engineer for 10 hours a week, they costed it. So I just say, I want $500,000 of internal spend to chase this deal. Brutal. And I was 27 years old.
Yeah, exactly. But again, then you just start, if you're clever, you just notice the patterns and then you never get it. So, all right. So we're going to drop in. So anonymous attendee. Thank you, anonymous. Biggest misconceptions of enterprise sales.
Biggest misconceptions. Well, coming back to our definition of an enterprise sale, right, which by definition is complex, multi-departmental, and high value. This is a good segue actually, is that you can do it without having a statement like this. You have to have a compelling value proposition with metrics that align to executive priorities. If you don't have that, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I already kind of gave my take here about like the misconceptions. I think it's the long sales cycle. The other would be, I think dumbest things that people do that handicap themselves by 2 to 3 months is procurement. I feel like enterprise sales is an agile approach where you're soft playing 5 different work streams at once at different versus this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And if you get to the end, and procurement takes 3 months, 2 months, whatever, that's your own damn fault. Like I've consistently found in deals that you're in, when you get to the proposal stage and you go to the people, you say, look, I'm going to send over our MSA so we can get that ball rolling in conjunction. Saves you 2 months. Because it's going to take another month or 2 to get through the proof of concept or to get through the whatever. So that would just maybe be a tactic.
A double bite of the cherry as well. So don't ever negotiate with your business stakeholder without having procurement in the room. Because guess what? They're going to take they
want their blood. Well. They got to get their blood because that's how a lot of them get comped. Like for those of you who don't know, guess what? Some procurement, not all, some procurement gets comped on % savings.
Yeah, don't think you can negotiate with procurement on value, because to your point, in very large organizations, they get category-based responsibility, right? So the category of IT spend needs to go down by 5% this year. That's what they get paid on. So then the business owner internally has to have the horsepower to negotiate with them to spend money on your stuff.
All right. So next one, another anonymous attendee, very secretive. How do I convince an exec to take a meeting and see me as more than a rep? I think we've kind of covered this. Anything else you want to add to that? Like about, again, it's like you get introduced to how you sound like. Anything else you want to add to it? Maybe something we didn't hit on?
Just don't forget that statement. What is it that you know that they need to know now? Why do they have to know now? And if you can answer that question, then you can get a meeting.
Yeah. Versus like, again, especially at the exec level, I think creating the need becomes more difficult. This is great. We also know that each department has separate needs. What are tips have for opening up departmental level evaluations and trying them to the large organization goals to broaden the evaluation size? I'll take a crack at this. Look, it's interesting. And I know myself, meaning I'm a singles and doubles hitter. Like if you all know baseball, I have made a career, and our method, kind of what we teach is you take down one deal, then you don't try to mash 5 deals together. It's probably this is the other big reason that I see deals go long. It's just completely unrealistic. These 5 departments never work together. I'd rather take this one down, then get buy-in from these other 2 that if in 3 months, these KPIs, then I take those 2 down. And then by 10 months, I got a 7-figure deal. So that is how I handle this, is that there's times when like I'm going to take down 1 or 2 of these, but more often than not, I actually want to say, hey, you know what? That's great. This department might want to use it. Let's table that for 60 days. Let's focus on this, and then we'll move forward. To me, don't be greedy, right? Maybe I'm a Kansas City Royals fan. We play small ball, so that's how I think. I just advance the runners, and we score versus trying to hit home runs 24/7. And I think, but that's also, I think, what served me well. Whereas I've seen other people be successful with the mix.
For an enterprise rep, I always train people to have a portfolio of opportunities. I reckon that you should have the deer that are running around that if you only got them, that'll get you 80% of your quota. But you've got those 2 or 3 elephants that if you get, will put you through 120, 150%. But don't just focus on them, because they're the ones that, to your point, you either get them or you don't, and it's binary. So you need to have the run rate business as well. You can't just have the 2 or 3 you're just praying to get in the quarter.
That's it. And that's it. And because I know I'm going to grow them. I know it. Like, I know that I'm going to deliver. This is a good one. This is someone tactically asking, if they want to break into enterprise sales from SMB when moving companies, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to position themselves as an enterprise, person, or wants to get up to speed as an enterprise person?
Yeah, okay. So here's the thing. First, I'll say a lot of people think that enterprise is a promotion and a natural progression path. I'll tell you it is not. I'll say it's a different profile of role. And I personally made the mistake of promoting the best mid-market rep into an enterprise role, failed miserably, went back to mid-market and made more money. You've got to decide whether or not you're the sort of person that enjoys the complexity, because that's what it is, the complexity and understanding of interacting at that enterprise level, and loves the long sales cycles. At EDS, I had 3 deals for 2 years, hoping to win 1. That's a different emotional game to getting deals every month and every quarter, right? And please don't think you need to do that. I would say that you will not get put into an enterprise role if you haven't done it at the same company. No one will take the risk on you, right?
I think that's it. I mean, but again, you got to think about, if you're writing your LinkedIn profile, talking about those long deals that you worked, talking about the biggest deals you worked, talking about how you understand the complexity. I see a lot of people who do career change and they suffer from this too. It's like, actually, I know you were in oil and gas, you want to get into SaaS, but like, as you describe it, like, just describe what you just said to me. Like, I think a lot of people, they struggle to describe it in a way that makes it easy for a hiring manager to actually say yes. So, all right, man, we got to wrap up, but we'll do one more here. Let's talk a little bit about proof of concepts. So we've got proof points, people talking about KPIs, how important are proof points, especially for a startup. Brian had a question about mirroring language that we could take to. Maybe talk just a little bit about proof of concepts. Like, what are what are your kind of like top cheat sheets for a proof of concept is to do that, or developing proof points? Because I think that that's important, and it's so applicable for enterprise sales too.
Yeah. Proof of concept. So 2 things. One, best case scenario is you write the end contract, the end goal that's tied to the successful outcome. So it's already signed and they opt out of it, right? It's not I'll opt into it. It's like I have to opt out if it's not successful. That's the best case. Worst case, you have a proof of concept with executive sponsor approval of the definitive KPIs that must be met. It cannot be done just at the departmental level. I want the approver, the person who can move budget around, to say, yes, if you do this, then it is our intention to move forward. That's sort of my top 2.
And I'll add, and you confirm budget. If you confirm like that, you confirm that if we hit these KPIs, you'll move forward, and we have budget to move forward.
Yeah, and that's why I like to, obviously, if we can sign it in advance, it sort of tells us the legal's approved and the budget's available.
And the key, and let me give you another tip too here. You try to set the KPIs for success in an enterprise deal. I know what they want, but I know for a fact, if I let them say, well, Jacob, we want to see a 2% increase in throughput, which would mean like $1 billion to them or something, right? Like, I want to set the KPIs for success. I want to at least tee it up, right? And start with my KPIs for success, because I'm sure you see, like, I can't let them anchor to bullshit, because they're going to try to anchor to like, this crazy outcome. So I found if you can start the process saying, look, here's what we typically see with an organization like your success, and based on our conversations, this is what do you agree? Yep, that works for us. As opposed to tell us your KPIs and they're like, well, we want to do this. And you're like, dude, come on, man. Like, we got to anchor off it. So, all right, my man, this is a lot of fun. So yes, there will be a recording. We'll send out to everybody. Yes, Matt, you good if we share the slides? Is that cool?
Yeah, of course.
Share the slides. Great. We'll share the slides. And thank you, man. This is fun. This is everything.
Sounds like we've got a job to do. Now we have to dissect some S1s and whatnot. For
Guess we're doing it, man. I love that part too, man. So cool. All right, Matt, where should everybody find you? Where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Sassy Sales Leadership, spelt like SaaS. Reach out, hop on, join the newsletter, find out what's going on.
Do that. Same thing. Find me on LinkedIn. It's probably how you found me in the first place. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We hope you had a ton of takeaways. Feel free, DM, share what you learned. We appreciate you. And thanks again, Mr. Cameron.
Good to see you, Jay. Bye.
Take care, everyone.